I'm thrilled to be with you again this morning, and I'm especially delighted to have as my text Psalm 30. The verse in Psalm 30, the sixth verse in our bulletin, is perhaps my second favorite, ripped from the headline selection from Psalms in the entire Psalter. My first is 118:24. This is the day the Lord hath made. Let us rejoice and delight in it. And so we do. This morning we delight to be with one another and to celebrate as we do. But my next favorite verse is the one that we shared only moments ago, 36, which says, "Weeping may spend the night, but joy comes in the morning." The book of Psalms was, you may know, the Jews' first original prayer book. Though not laid out in any systematic fashion, the 150 selections therein, poems and songs and prayers, comprise the Psalter and express profound human longings and emotion. And to this day, Psalms make up an integral part of Jewish worship. Selections are recited daily and on the Sabbath and, of course, on holidays and festivals. Traditionally, Judaism ascribes 73 of the 150 Psalms to King David. For everything else we hold to be true about King David, this poet, warrior, and lover leader, for all else, we know that King David, in the words of 16th century Spanish mystic St. John of the Cross, we know that King David knew what the mystic referred to as dark nights of the soul. Indeed, in Psalm 30, David writes, "I had once thought in my security that I could never be shaken, but when you, O God, withdrew your favor, I was terrified." You live long enough and you realize how suddenly life can change and how easily one's faith can be shaken. Who among us can hear King David's words about his being terrified once he feels distance from God? Who can hear these words and not resonate to the night terrors that disturbed King David's sleep? When this purported author of Psalm 30, when he writes that weeping, fear and sadness and darkness may be with you for the night, but the morning shall bring joy, this teaches us some important fundamentals of faith. The darkness of night comes to us all, obviously on a 24-hour daily basis, but so too metaphorically as we cast our eyes across the span of our lives. Indeed, recall that in Jewish tradition, holidays, and for that matter, each day of the week, begins with sundown, with the encroaching darkness, and then dawn breaks every day, and the cycle begins anew. Evening brings darkness, with it a new day, and come dawn, the joy of morning. Do you know why this pattern exists? It is because in the first chapter of Genesis, which recounts the six-day creation story, each day of creation culminates with the phrase, "And there was evening and there was morning, day one. There was evening and morning, day two." And all through each of the 6 days of creation, and so thereby did Jewish tradition determine that as morning follows evening, as day follows night, as joy follows grief, light follows darkness. And in this way do we have our tradition. Even more so is this pattern woven into the very act of divine creation at the onset. Consider that in the beginning, God began to create the world with the declaration, "Let there be light." But I suggest to you that this was actually in response to an unarticulated, implicit question: why is it so dark in here? And thus, Vayihi or, there was light. Prior, Jewish tradition understands that before creation was primordial darkness and confusion, dark nights of the soul for all of eternity, all shrouded in darkness, all grounded in grief, and then, if you will, in a very real way, hope, creation, possibility, and joy enters the world. Darkness gives way to light. Morning, M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G, gives way to M-O-R-N-I-N-G. Mourning gives way to mourning. Grief gives way to joy. just as the psalm assures us. Many of us may be familiar with the first few lines of poet Ella Wheeler Wilcox's poem Solitude, which says, "Laugh and the world laughs with you, weep and you weep alone." But you know the rest of the poem. It is in part the following: "Laugh and the world laughs with you, weep and you weep alone. For the sad old earth must borrow its mirth, but has trouble enough of its own. Rejoice and men will seek you, grieve and they turn and go. They want full measure of all your pleasure, but they do not need your woe. For the sad old earth must borrow its mirth, but of trouble she has enough of her own." Life, as we well appreciate, is a series of challenges and choices with outcomes uncertain, and sorrow enough to break any heart. No one escapes, and though it may feel as if we know too well King David's existential nighttime fears and his sense of being forsaken, Ella Wilcox's solitude, and each of us all too familiar with what it is to weep alone, to cry oneself to sleep, to be troubled all the night through. The fundamentals of faith is that our loneliness and our loss are universal and ubiquitous, but so are they impermanent. And thus we can be certain, as surely as mourning will follow night and joy will follow grief, Gam ze ya'avor, David teaches, this too shall pass. Ella Wilcox reminds us that weeping may linger for the night and joy will come in the morning, and in this we are not at all alone. Have faith in the possibilities, we are told. Hold fast to hope and believe. Believe in the promise that tomorrow, ever on the horizon, will bring with it a measure of consolation and perchance no small amount of joy. And know this with a full heart, that in the paraphrased words of Psalm 30, according to the lyrics of contemporary Christian rock band Salos, in the morning we shall experience sweet after bitter and hope after fears, home after wandering, praise after tears, sheaves after sowing, sun after rain, sight after mystery, peace after pain. Long feels the night, but it gives, and soon morning breaks and a new day, a day which the Lord hath made, is upon us. And this morning is full of God's glory. Let us share with one another our pain, our praise, our joy, and our delight. Amen.